Thank you so much for accepting the interview. So nice to see you during UNGA.
It's always a pleasure, and thanks again. I remember we did an interview last year as well.
Exactly, around the same time.
Yes.
Yes, so this year, as the UN approaches its 80th anniversary, how do you reflect the organization's legacy in advancing global climate action, and what key milestones stand out to you?
Thank you so much. This is the year we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. And 80 years ago, climate change was definitely not one of the priorities of the organization. Back then, we knew little, if anything, about climate change. But over the course of the last 30 plus years, the world has been able to come together, develop a multilateral framework, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It has also been able to bring together the global scientific community together to create the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And this even predates the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And it has resulted in a global consensus that climate change is real. It is man-made. It is caused by human activity. And it has subsequently resulted in a series of global agreements. You first had the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, then you had the Kyoto Protocol, then you had the Paris Agreement 10 years ago, which identified a number of key objectives. We're still off track from solving the climate crisis, but the United Nations has been absolutely instrumental in bringing countries, scientists, private sector together to solve this crisis. And this year, as we celebrate 80 years of the United Nations, we also celebrate 10 years of the Paris Agreement. And a significant amount of progress has been made over the course of the last 10 years. 10 years ago, the world was heading towards close to 4 degrees Celsius of warming. As a result of the Paris Agreement and the national climate plans or nationally determined contributions that countries that are party to the Paris Agreement are to submit, that has dropped to 2.6 degrees Celsius. Still far from the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Agreement, but it shows that multilateralism can deliver and that international cooperation is absolutely key to solving global threats and challenges like the climate crisis.
So from your position as Special Advisor on Climate Action, what are the United Nations' top priorities right now for accelerating global decarbonization before 2030? And how does China fit into that strategy?
Well, the sense is absolutely clear. And we need rapid and sustained emission reductions now. We can't wait until 2030. And we've seen since the finalization of the Paris Agreement 10 years ago, the rapid acceleration in the growth of renewables and other clean energy technologies. And I'll give a few examples. 10 years ago, just over 150 gigawatts of clean energy, renewable energy was deployed globally, 153 gigawatts. Last year alone, close to 600 gigawatts of clean energy was deployed. That's about close to 300% increase in a decade. That's astounding. Electric vehicles. 10 years ago, less than 1% of all new cars sold globally were electric vehicles. Last year, that was 20%. The International Energy Agency estimates that this year, 25% of all new cars sold globally will be electric vehicles. Now, most of that is happening in China. China leads the world in the deployment of clean energy technology. China leads the world in the manufacturing and deployment of electric vehicles, and other sources of clean energy. So the role of China is absolutely indispensable. China has massively invested in clean energy. It's made a choice that clean energy is the future, and it has exceeded many of the targets that it has set in the climate process around clean energy. So the role of China has been central in driving this clean energy revolution. It is clear that we still need to go a bit faster, and we also need to ensure that other developing countries are also part of the clean energy revolution.
Yeah, you just talk about that China right now is a leader in clean energy development. So how can China's experience be leveraged to accelerate the global renewable energy transition, especially for developing countries?
China serves as inspiration to other developing countries, right? The reality is that 3 out of every 4 persons globally live in countries that are net importers of fossil fuels, right? Including persons in China. Many countries are now redefining energy security as not having access to a commodity, coal, oil, or gas, but they're seeing energy security as being able to produce homegrown renewable energy. And China has been an example of that. So we really need China to continue to serve as that model and example for other developing countries. But we also need China's support in ensuring that other developing countries can be part of the clean energy revolution. Since the finalization of the Paris Agreement, 4 out of every $5 invested globally in clean energy has gone to China and the advanced economies. It's not China's fault. Now, if we are to accelerate the pace of the transition, we need to ensure that the rest of the developing world that just received that 1 out of every $5 of investment in clean energy, so your Indias, your Brazils, your Pakistans, small and developing states, the African countries, the least developed countries. These countries, they represent 2/3 of global population. Now, we need these countries to catch up in the clean energy revolution. And there are benefits for both sides, for multiple sides. Countries will have access to homegrown, clean electricity. We still have 800 million people around the world who lack access to electricity. 600 million are in Africa alone. Renewables can provide these countries, especially persons who live in countries that are hard to reach, because you can't build a coal-fired power plant or a nuclear plant or even a gas-fired power plant in someone's backyard. You can put solar panels on the roof. You can put a windmill up, put some batteries there, and provide energy access for the very first time to the most remote villages on Earth. The benefits of clean energy are absolutely enormous, but we need really targeted investment, and we need targeted support to ensure that the developing world can also be part of this clean energy revolution.
Yes, so besides taking the leadership in clean energy, China has also pledged climate finance to support developing countries through initiatives like the South-South Climate Cooperation Fund. So how can such efforts be scaled and integrated into the UN's probably broader climate financial goals?
So we're at a moment of time where the solutions are readily available, not only for clean energy, but also for adaptation and resilience building. And I'll give one example, early warning systems. And this is something that we've been working with the Chinese government on. We know that if you have an effective early warning system, so a multi-hazard early warning systems for climate disasters, it saves lives. It also protects property and protects livelihoods. $1 invested in early warning systems or in adaptation can yield up to $12 in savings if that system is working well, that the climate related damages are 30% less. Right? If you can have these systems, and they're not that expensive, they're easily deployed. You need technology, but you also need, every country and community will need a communications plan. If you can get these systems up and running, then we can save lives and protect livelihoods around the world. It will be absolutely key that Chinese support on both the clean energy side, but also adaptation, resilience, and also on early warning systems, that we can find ways ensuring that Chinese support is part of a broader ecosystem of support where China is working with the United Nations, working with other partners, working with the global climate funds, working with the multilateral development banks, so that countries know that they have the full support of a broader ecosystem of partners and stakeholders that are supporting their different priorities.
So we've talked a lot about Paris Agreement, and looking ahead, how do you envision the evolution of China's partnership with the United Nations on climate action, probably over the next 5 to 10 years, over the next decade, particularly in accelerating progress toward the Paris Agreement?
So first 10 years, we've learned a lot. We've seen solutions being deployed. And our honest assessment is that the next 10 years need to be the decade of acceleration. We've seen in China over the course of the last few years, the exponential growth of clean energy deployment. At the same time, we've seen emissions in China decline over the course of the last few decades. And this upcoming COP in Brazil, COP30, needs to help to set that up by sending, one, we need countries to put on the table, new and ambitious NDCs that provide hope, that demonstrate leadership, that show the inevitability of the clean energy revolution. And because those national climate plans are absolutely critical in sending that signal on the seriousness of each country to accelerate this transition over the next decade. And we just need to roll our sleeves up and get the job done. Luckily, this last decade has shown us that it can be done. You need clear policies, and China has provided us with an excellent roadmap. The announcement 5 years ago of China's dual carbon targets was a fantastic acceleration. It resulted in a spark that led to the type of innovation that we've seen over the course, I would say, of the last 5 years plus. Now, these next 10 years, we need to see that acceleration, that exponential growth in clean energy deployment, that exponential growth of finance flow into developing and emerging economies. We need to see that in the rest of the world now.